On the 8th of April 2005, the country was in mourning. It was the day of Pope John Paul II's burial, and Josephine O'Loughlin was watching the funeral from her bedsit in Dublin. Little did she know that in the sleepy village of Ennistymon, where she'd raised her family, her youngest daughter Emer was also about to meet her tragic end.
Emer was born in '82. Usual bubbly little baby. She was always full of life, jolly, very happy in herself. Always wanted to do things. Followed me everywhere.
She was a very pleasant child, very outgoing, and very friendly with even other children. And she wasn't what you'd call a disruptive child. Like, if you told her to do something, she'd do it. And if she didn't want to do it, she'd let you know she didn't want to do it.
I moved away when Emer was very young. I moved away to England for work. I used to get frequent reports back about how she was doing at school and how artistic she was. And it was basically happy little girl. And that's how it always came across with her. She was happy. Very happy little girl.
Art was her main thing. No matter what it was, she drew it. From a young age up. There's always something stuck on the wall, got to do with pictures of herself, pictures of something she'd just seen maybe that day. She'd always be sketching. That was her main interest.
She always looked at things differently. Like when it came to her art, like when it comes to me taking photographs, I like to look at things differently. And I think she taught me that. I used to pick up my camera and take a photograph straight at it, at the object, and then she taught me that, no, lie down on the ground, put your head in the muck, you'll have a better photograph, and I still do it.
All the conversations with Emer was always about art. She'd even point out something in my flat, and she'd say, "Ma'am, that doesn't look right." And I say, "Why, what's wrong with it? It doesn't, you should put stickers on this and stickers on that." But that was Emer. Emer created her own environment.
In her late teens, Emer began a relationship with her childhood sweetheart, Shane Bowe.
And it was quite a serious relationship because they had decided to travel together. They'd gone to live in Holland, spent 2 years there. They'd also had a wonderful 3-month holiday in Thailand. So she was a very young woman, 23 years old, and had done a lot in her short life already.
She'd always tell me her stories of when she was in Thailand and when she was here and there, and even photos we have of her when she was away, how relaxed she looked when she was away, and you knew she was happy.
Following their travels, Emer and Shane returned to Ennistymon and began planning their future together.
They had decided they were going to live on a mobile home on land owned by Shane's family. So essentially they were going to save money on rent with a view to building a home.
I remember the first day she got the mobile home. Emer got the mobile home. I actually pulled it in with a jeep into the site. And that was the happiest day of my life, I'd say, that she wanted something.
It was out in the sticks, as we'd call it. It was where she wanted to be, and the quality of work that she got out of being up there was amazing. She'd take off for her walks, do her sketches, come back, and it was just some place she just loved being.
Emer's personal life had fallen into place, and it wasn't long before her artistic aspirations also began to flourish.
In April 2005, Emer was studying at the Galway Mayo Institute of Technology, and she had already completed a photography course and she was studying art there. But at that stage, she had just got the news in recent times that she was being accepted onto the course at the National College of Art and Design in Dublin, coming up that next September.
In fact, she was even arranging. She said, "Ma'am, if I get there, instead of staying in college, I could be able to stay with you." And I said, "Emer, that'll be brilliant, that'll be great."
In the midst of all Emer's planning came a day that would change the O'Loughlin's lives forever.
The 8th of April 2005 was the day of the funeral of Pope John Paul II, and Galway Mayo Institute of Technology was closed, and so Emer found herself with a free day.
The electricity in the couple's home wasn't working that morning, and Emer's phone needed to be charged. They discussed the possibility of Emer asking their neighbour if she could plug her phone in at his mobile home, and Shane left for work. It was to be the last time Shane would see Emer alive. Several hours passed, and Shane received a phone call informing him that his neighbour's mobile home was on fire.
By the time he got back, the fire had been going for quite some time, and he contacted Gardaí in Gort, and then the Gardaí in Gort in turn dispatched the Sergeant Patrick Fahey from Kinvara Garda Station to the scene, and he got there at around 4 o'clock.
When the Gardaí arrived, Shane was frantic with worry. He couldn't find Emer anywhere. It was clear that her mobile home, that there was no disturbance there. Her car was there, her keys were there, and 2 dogs that the couple had were also running around the site. Shane pointed out to the sergeant who went there what they believed to be human remains. A doctor confirmed that, and as a result of that then the scene was preserved. It was very clear that the remains were badly charred and damaged by the fire.
At this stage, there was no sign of Emer or the owner of the caravan at the site, and when Emer failed to answer her phone, Shane began to fear the worst.
Well, Shane thought that Emer had gone up to charge her phone because that was the discussion they'd had that morning, so he was getting more and more concerned. And then Emer's family are arriving at the scene as well, her father and brothers arriving at the scene, none of whom have heard from Emer at all.
There was just a lot of confusion and basically panic going around because they didn't really know if she was there or not.
I was concerned about Emer because Emer would never go anywhere without her dogs. Say 2 dogs. But the dogs were around.
Her keys were there, her wallet was there. You know, all her usual stuff was as it was. We knew, just looking around, that it wasn't right. Everything was out of character there.
Uncertain as to the identity of the remains, the O'Loughlins searched the vicinity for signs of Emer's whereabouts. With his sister still missing, John volunteered to break the news to his mum and sister.
Drove to Dublin, and I had to tell them in person. I just found you can't get information like that over the phone. So I drove to Dublin, told Mum.
I was sitting beside the bed and he knelt down in front of me and he said, "Ma'am, I've bad news for you." And he just said, there was a fire in another caravan next to Emer's, but Emer can't be found.
Then I had to get on a flight and I flew over to England to my sister, and that hurt her, just to see her break down as well, but no one should go through that, no one.
Everything was pointing to it being Emer in the fire, the fact that she was missing and nobody could find her anywhere. I really did fear the worst, and I think I knew straight from the beginning that it was Emer that was in that fire.
Gardaí were anxious to find the owner of the caravan, John Griffin, to establish that the remains were not his.
And it's that night that word comes through that John Griffin has been found in Galway City. So people are becoming more and more fearful that it is Emer's body in the mobile home.
The remains found were so badly burnt, it was impossible to tell whether they were male or female. But 4 days after the fire, DNA tests confirmed the O'Loughlin's worst fears. Their beloved Emer was dead.
Gardaí and Detective Gardaí held a conference in Gort Garda Station today to discuss the ongoing investigation and inquiries relating to the death of Emer O'Loughlin over a week ago. Gardaí say the 23-year-old Ennistymon native was positively identified last evening following DNA tests carried out at the Forensic Science Laboratory at Garda headquarters in Dublin. Emer O'Loughlin's death is now being treated as suspicious, and Superintendent Paul Moakler confirmed that Gardaí are following all lines of inquiry that their investigations are directing them.
Initially, efforts were made to locate John Griffin, who was the owner of that particular caravan, and he was located in Galway.
It was on the night of the fire itself that Gardaí found John Griffin, and he said that he had not been at Ballybornagh that day. He had actually left the night before and had travelled to Galway and had stayed with a relative overnight.
2 days later, John Griffin was found on the island of Ennistymon, having barricaded himself inside Dunenga's fort. After some time, Gardaí persuaded Griffin to remove himself from the fort. In the meantime, the post-mortem on Emer O'Loughlin's remains had failed to conclusively reveal the nature of how she died.
The cause of death was unascertainable due to the damage to the body caused by the fire. So the big question was, had the fire caused Emer's death, or had something else caused her death prior to the fire?
Right from the beginning, there was an awful lot of questions about what had happened to Emer, how she ended up where she ended up, how she ended up dead, and just a huge amount of questions which couldn't be answered by anybody at the time.
In the days following her death, Emer's family struggled to come to terms with their loss, and the cause of her death was still unknown to Gardaí. Meanwhile, John Griffin was once again spotted on Ennistymon.
Local Gardaí received a call to indicate that the entrance to the Dunenga's fort was again barricaded in a similar fashion to what had happened the previous week. And on going there, they found a pile of Mr. Griffin's clothes stacked neatly on the cliff edge.
Initially, people would naturally assume that perhaps John Griffin had come to some harm either on land or may have entered the water below. So this was fully investigated by Gardaí. There were a number of searches along Ennistymon and along the Galway coastline, and there was no trace of John Griffin in the water. The only trace of John Griffin on Ennistymon is that set of clothes at the top of the cliff.
Having found no trace of a body, John Griffin is presumed alive, and Gardaí are still anxious to locate him.
The investigating Gardaí have circulated the descriptive particulars of John Griffin locally, nationally and internationally, and that he is sought for interview by Gardaí.
Meanwhile, Emer's family were preparing to bury their youngest born.
We went up as a family to Galway to pick Emer's body up. And obviously, because of the way that she died and the nature of her death, we couldn't obviously have an open coffin.
And I think it was Pamela. Yeah, it was Pamela that told me, "Ma'am, the coffin won't be opened." And there again, stupid as I was, I said, "Why not?" You know, I said, "Why not? Why can't I see her?"
Emer's funeral was difficult, because you never think yourself that you'd bury your own kids before you. That was the hardest part of it.
It was a massive funeral, and I was there, physically, but not mentally. You know, I could see what was going on around me, but it didn't really connect with me. I might as well have been at somebody else's funeral, you know, with no connections whatsoever.
Didn't get a chance to see her, didn't get a chance to say goodbye, and it was very difficult. Very difficult.
The world in general just lost out on Emer, like, we're losing her, you know, her nieces and nephews don't have an aunt, but I mean, she loved them. I know they lost out on something special, be it 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line. Emer was going to be there from some stage, and she was going to help him do something, no matter what it was. That's what they lose out on. Her life, her spirit, her activities, her way of thinking.
And as the years passed, the trauma of Emer's death would further take its toll on her family.
With all the emotion and all the stress of everything, really, it's driven wedges in our family, really. And it's caused us no end of heartache.
It hadn't been really good for our family at all. Normally something like this would bring a family together, but it just has torn the family apart. So.
In 2007, Pamela O'Loughlin set up a Facebook page in a bid to keep her sister's memory alive.
It was to remember what she was like and how lovely she was, and to give her friends somewhere where they could leave their memories of Emer, but also any information regarding the case, any information regarding what had been found could be communicated out there, basically.
In 2010, the investigation made progress, following advice from the Serious Crime Review team.
During the review of the case, the Serious Crime Review team produced a number of recommendations in order to assist the senior investigating officer in progressing the case. One of those recommendations was to carry out an exhumation of the remains of Emer O'Loughlin.
As a result of our contact with the Serious Crime Review team, they put us in touch with Miss Laureen Buckley, a forensic anthropologist who had begun to work with the state pathologist. And as a result of her expertise and opinion, we applied to the coroner for County Clare to have an exhumation order issued.
When we heard that they wanted to exhume her body, it was obviously quite an emotional time, but nobody had any hesitation in giving the go-ahead for it, because we felt that it might give us answers, it might give us a little bit more to go on, so we agreed straight away.
Her remains were then taken to Galway University Hospital for a second post-mortem, which was conducted by Dr. Mike Curtis and Dr. Laureen Buckley. As a result of this second post-mortem examination, it was established that Emer O'Loughlin had suffered a violent death prior to the starting of the fire at the caravan.
We'd always believed that Emer was more than, because Emer would put up a fight. Emer had never backed down from anything.
Having confirmed that Emer O'Loughlin had died in a violent manner, the case was upgraded to a murder investigation, and the need to speak to the owner of the burnt-out mobile home became all the more urgent. In 2011, Crime Stoppers issued a reward to anyone offering information on the whereabouts of John Griffin.
Gardaí described John Griffin as somebody who was sought for interview, as somebody who they very much wished to speak with in relation to what happened at Ballybornagh, what happened to Emer O'Loughlin in April 2005, and they've never been able to fully speak with him. And the fact that he went missing within 2 weeks of Emer's body being found in his mobile home meant that they never got to sit down and have a detailed discussion with him.
In the intervening years since the death of Emer O'Loughlin, there have been a number of sightings of a person described as being John Griffin, and one in particular, it was in Germany, were investigated. But to date, none of those sightings have been substantiated.
And perhaps that's the way he may be found, through public appeals and through the wider community keeping an eye out, studying this man's photograph and looking out for him. And perhaps the public can solve the mystery of the whereabouts of John Griffin.
Emer's family have had good support from the local community in the Ballybornagh area, and indeed a cross has been erected to her memory at the site where she died. And every year locals commemorate her there.
You miss her around the place, and then we always talk about her, all the family. Even I have a son, he's only 10 years of age. He can't pass the graveyard. We have to call in. He's always talking about her, even at school.
Even though she had gone up to 23 years, to me, she was always a child. She was always a baby, you know what I mean? My baby.
In the 8 years since Emer died, I've often wondered what she'd be doing now if she was still alive. Would she have kids? Would she be living in the house that she was planning to build with her long-term boyfriend? I do wonder if she would have stayed with her art. Would it have been something she would have pursued? Would she have become well-known as an artist? And there's so many things that we're going to miss out on over the next few, years to come because Emer was taken away from us, really.
But I do feel angry because Emer's killer is still out there, and this could happen to another family. It's not just about us. Might get our closure, we might get our answers, but somebody else's family could go through this again.
Like this time of year is hard because it's Daffodil Day, and Emer's thing was about daffodils. She loved daffodils because she always used to call it like sunshine in a bulb. You try to switch off and it's there in the back of your head. You wake up at night, it's in the back of your head. And just little things trigger it off, and like as I said, daffodils trigger mine off.
It's not an easy thing. But then I say to myself, I'm thinking this is hard. What did she go through? So that's the only thing that's keeping me going, is the fact that whoever did this will be caught.
She's very difficult all the time. That we have no answers. We'll be asking questions and we'll get no answers.
We want closure. We want to be able to say, yeah, such and such happened, no matter how bad it was. You need to know. We need the people out there to help us to find those answers.
Someone's out there. The person who killed my sister is out there. And someone must know where they are. And all we want is answers. All we want is some understanding of why what happened, just so we can find some peace. Just find some peace from it all, really.
You can go on for hours and hours and days, which I've done for the last 8 years, and I'll never make sense of what happened. And I'll never understand what happened. And it'll never connect with me until we get justice.
If you have any information relating to this case, please get in touch using one of these numbers.